All right, good morning. We are going to talk about bookkeeping today, and it's our very last class. So if you haven't seen the other ones, please look and see that there's a whole library I've made of like beginner eBay or refresher course type eBay with customer service. And we went through basically anything you could think of, promotions, markdowns, and they should all be labeled. So you should be able to see those. Today we're going to talk about bookkeeping, which anybody in the group knows I'm passionate about bookkeeping and knowing our numbers, because if we don't know our numbers, how do we know if we're making any money? Anybody that doesn't know too, in my past life, I did tax accounting for 16 years, and I've been in corporate bookkeeping for, I don't know, since I got done with my business degree in college. So I'm big on numbers and big on bookkeeping. I think it's super important. So I wanted this to be my last class because it's also where I lose people. Some people are like, this is like, nobody wants to talk about numbers or bookkeeping, and I could do it every day. So, one main aspect of why we need to keep our numbers is to make sure we are earning money and not churning money. So there are a lot of big resellers that post a lot of big numbers and they are churning lots of money. They are not earning lots of money. So when I say that, I mean, you could be bringing in, $50,000, $60,000 90-day totals, but if it's all going back out the door, did you really earn any money, or are you just churning money? And when I'm working for my hard-earned money, I don't want to just churn it. I want to earn it. So if we aren't keeping track of our numbers, which, I'll be the first to admit, it's gotten away from me before. And when I hadn't, one number that I hadn't tracked for a while was how many items I was sourcing per month versus how many items I was listing per month. So that's a really important number to track, because for me, I wasn't sourcing enough. So if I'm doing 40 a day and I want to go to 50 a day, then I need to be able to source at least that many a week. Well, I was like short like 400 or 500 for the month, but I'd had an estate I bought out, so I had some extra. If I didn't have that extra, I would have ran out of inventory. The opposite is also true. If you find yourself, when you're tracking how many items you sourced in a month, and you source 200 items in a month and you only list 100, well, then where is all your money? Your money is sitting in the extra item sourced. Now, there are exceptions. I'm not saying that's bad or that you shouldn't do it. It's just being aware of it. And that's what these numbers are important for. It doesn't mean that you have to do it all one way, or one way is right, one way is wrong. It's that it just brings awareness to what we're doing. So that brought an awareness to me that I wasn't actively sourcing enough items. And for somebody else, maybe it'll bring awareness, tracking how many items you source, that maybe you're oversourcing. So it's not about, I think sometimes people feel like, well, I don't want to keep track of my numbers because if I share them, then it's like a way to trap me. No, it's the exact opposite. It's so that you are more aware of your situation. It's not a contest. It's not, because I will say there's lots of people that absolutely know their numbers, that know that they are on, sorry for the little dog ear. They absolutely know that they make, let's say, a $10 net profit per item, right? They are making so much money, right? So it's not a contest on what numbers can get higher, like when we share in the group and stuff. It's more of how much, if you're meeting your particular income goals. And so if you feel and think that you're doing $30 net profit transactions, but yet you have never kept your numbers, and then we do your numbers and turns out really you're doing $10 net profit per item transactions that you get to keep, well, then that's not a, oh, shame on you. That's a, hey, now we know. And is that going to meet your goals that you need to make? So it's definitely not a contest in any way. So I know that I need to be able to draw my paycheck, and I'm pretty open about it. My numbers are pretty open, that I take out $1,250 a week for my paycheck. So that is net profit that I need to be able to pull out of the business every week. And if I don't make that, then basically I'm working for free, or I'm working for less money than what I need to be able to pull out of the business to pay my personal bills. If you aren't living off this money, maybe it's your vacation fund, maybe this is your retirement fund money, and that's just as important. But you just need to know, okay, this is how much I want to pull out of my business a month, and then we work it backwards. So if you've never tracked your numbers, some of the numbers I suggest that we track, or that I will tell you what I'm tracking, that can help, is I always track the items I source. And I do this, I try to keep track of it every day, but at least every week. And there's something about having to write it down, because if I'm just out there sourcing it, I'm just buying and buying and buying, and I don't have to like be accountable for it. I feel like sometimes maybe then I'm just not, it just doesn't mean as much, or I'm not paying as close of attention to it. So if I have to write down how many items I sourced and how much it cost me total, and I keep in that number, well, if that number gets to be, more than my profit, and I'm not making, and my income isn't going up accordingly, or I'm not listing those items, then I know I need to back down, or that, hey, I'm not paying close enough attention to my bottom line. Because a lot of people, including myself, has happened at times, is if I'm sitting here going, man, my sales are great, I'm doing really great, and I don't have any money, right? Usually that's because my money is sitting in a pile of items I sourced but aren't listed yet. And so I don't want my money sitting there staring at me. I want my money in my bank account. And so I feel like recording these things, no matter what, I don't care if you are only listing 5 a day. This is a great exercise for you. So I track my item sourced, my total cost of goods, and then I divide it out to what my average cost of goods is per item. Now, if I buy a huge lot and it has, let's say, 10 items in it, but only 5 are individually listed, well, then I'm going to divide that number by 5, not by 10, because the other ones went to a junk lot or I didn't list them. So I think that's an important differentiation to make, is I only divide it by the individually listable items. And then I also keep track of how many items I'm listing, because, but I'm really easy to do that with because I'm very consistent. If you're not consistent, does that mean you're bad? You're not feeding the algorithm? I don't know that I really buy into the whole, we have to feed eBay a certain number of items per day because that's the only way to make it work. I don't know that I believe that, but I do believe that I feed eBay 40 items a day currently, and I'm going to go up November 1st. I feed it 40 items a day, and I know what that kicks back out to me. So if you're going to be full time, I feel like that's really important, because I know if I give it this much, it gives me back this much, and my sales are very consistent. If I didn't necessarily need that consistency, and it's more for myself than anything, because I know that's my bottom line is 40. So I don't want people to hear me say I'm a 40-a-day lister and think that I think it's like an algorithmic thing. I think it's more of a keeps me in line for what I need for my net income thing. So then I also track, of course, number of items sold, but I'm really careful on how much weight I give this, right? Because there's weeks where I sell more items, but I make less money. Because for every item sold, I have to attach a cost of goods to it. So if I'm selling a bunch of things for $9, I may have a worse week net than if I sold, half as many for $20. So that number definitely shouldn't be a competition, because it's really subjective to what you're selling. Or there's whole weeks where I'm moving out a bunch of old inventory, and my number of items sold could sound really impressive, but my net profit might be less than it was when I sold half as much. So then I also track, I do keep track of my daily payouts, simply because I think it's good to look back on. It used to be if I had a net payout for more than $2,000 a week, I was like super impressed with myself, and I can look back on that and see that now. And I can also see, hey, this is how much now that I expect out of eBay. And it hasn't been that long. I went full time. Sorry, my dog's shaking their head. I went full time. Let's say I started in 2021, and I didn't really start doing jewelry full time till I think it was 2022. Yes, 2020, July of 2022. So, and I started back over from zero. I started completely over in the store. I took down 2,000 items and I started completely over. So I've been there. I've done this. It hasn't been that long, but it's good to be able to look back on my numbers and see, hey, I've really come a long way. And I think it's just nice for ourselves. It's not necessarily something you have to do for bookkeeping. And then we need to, of course, keep track of all of our expenses. And this is where it gets a little funny for people, because yes, we have our selling costs, right? So we have our promoted listings, we have any markdowns, we have, which just affects the actual sales price, gross sales, but we have eBay fees, we have shipping, we have all those good things that are in our costs, right? But what is our background costs, right? Those are things that I feel like sometimes we gloss over when we're talking about net profit per item. We gloss over the fact that we have, all of our boxes, all of our envelopes. Maybe we bought a new scale. We bought a new, gem tester. We had to get a new laptop. We, all these things that we don't always want to track and see what happens every single month. Like my boxes alone are a pretty good cost to me every month. My thermal labels, all of those things. So I suggest that every single one of you go through and you add all of those items up in an average month. And the way that I do this for bookkeeping is I take every single dollar that came out of my business bank account and I will write that down in a category for 3 solid months. So if I had, shipping boxes, if I had whatever came out, I bought a new jewelry book, I bought a reference book, I bought whatever I bought that came out of that business account, because everything coming out of there should be business related, right? And then I divide it and see how much money I'm spending per day or per week or however you want to do it. And those are our base costs for our business. And those are really important, because if we gloss by those, how do we know how much our business is costing us, even if we're not doing anything that day? So in my base costs, I also have built in my pay, which is $1,250 a week currently. So I put that in the base cost because I need to be able to cover what that is per day, every single day, whether I'm working at it or not. I need the business to generate that amount of money per day so that I get a paycheck. A big trap I think we fall into with bookkeeping in general is that we don't look at paying ourselves. So if we're just getting started, I totally understand putting it all back in the business. But when I'm coaching people and we're in year 2 and you've never taken anything to pay yourself, then we need to quit saying we're doing this to make money. Because right now you're just doing it to play the game. We're just putting the money in to be able to play on eBay, right? So the whole point of this for almost all of us is that we're doing it to make money. So if we're constantly making excuses why we can't take money out of the business because we're reinvesting all the time, which I hear constantly, I'm reinvesting. Okay, well, at what point are we churning all of our money and we're not earning anything to pay ourselves? That's a real red flag for me. So I get the reinvesting, but if we're not ever paying ourselves, then really we're just churning our money a lot. We're making excuses for why we're overspending usually. So if we're overspending, you'll see that when you can't pay yourself. I reinvested in the business for probably a good solid 6 months to get a good baseline before I started taking any money out. But after that, it needs to support itself. That's another thing. If you're taking money from your personal finances to cover business expenses, that's a huge red flag. Something's not working. Your business should be able to support itself. Yes, maybe you go into it to start it with a set amount, but after that, you shouldn't be spending money you don't have in the business. So I just don't think we should. That's just my opinion. I think we should be making the money from the sales. And if we're constantly doing that, never taking money for ourselves, then that's also means we're probably overspending. So oversourcing is a huge issue. You guys know I feel strongly about that. But I would be tracking these things. I don't care if you have a notebook. If you're not computer savvy and you just want to keep a notebook, okay, I sourced this many, today. I spent this much money on sourcing per day. And I made, I have $25 in costs every single day that I have to cover for my base expenses in a month when I figured out my business expenses. And what lots of times people will find out, if they've never done this before, is, oh, I have to make like $150 net profit in a day to just cover my base expenses, which includes our inventory costs. So if you have a sales day where maybe your sales were 500, but maybe our net was only 100, well, then we aren't really actually ever even breaking even. And eventually that doesn't pan out in our bank account. You're just churning the money back and forth. It's just going in a circle. It's not ever actually getting larger. So a big point I like to make is, let's say I take my draw at $1,250. Technically, even after that draw and all my expenses, my bank account every week should be increasing, right? It shouldn't really be going down. Now, can it? Yes, of course, but it should keep going up every week. If we are constantly, after all of our expenses and our pay and all that, staying the same, what does that mean for our business? We want to see that bottom line growing every week. Otherwise, we're just staying the same. We're just, so maybe we're supporting a paycheck, maybe we're supporting our expenses, but that means we're never actually getting ahead. So that's when these numbers are really good, because we can see, are we overspending? Where's our money at? Where's our money going? Why am I not ever getting ahead? And sometimes if we're a seasonal business, we'll see it kind of stagnate for a while, and that's okay. But in all, it should keep going up every week, and have a plan for that, right? So I have a plan for any money. When my business checking account gets over $4,000, I immediately scrape it off. So my business checking account never gets over $4,000 after all my bills and my paycheck are done for the week. I scrape that excess off and I put it into a savings account. Usually then either it gets invested into a retirement account, or when I had debt, it then pays debt. So it has a purpose after that. I don't really ever need to carry around more than $4,000 in my checking account. I want it to be working for me. So I either invest it or put it in savings. And I do have a business savings account for those big buys or whatnot. So, but I only need so much in each account, and then it needs to be, in investment accounts. So have a plan for scraping off the excess. And that's going to be different for everybody. So if you're really part-time, maybe, $500 or $600 is enough. Maybe if you're totally full-time and you're buying expensive products, maybe 10,000 isn't even enough. So you have to decide that for yourself. I don't buy into there's a cookie cutter way for all this to work and how everybody's numbers should look, because that's not true. Maybe you're just doing it for excess money. You spend every excess dime you make and you're enjoying the heck out of it. And this is your retirement fund money. As long as you can keep it moving forward, you're having a good time. Those are your goals, and that's terrific. And I'm behind it. If you're trying to support your family, then my advice is going to be totally different. So we have to be a little fluid in what we say, because we all are different people running different businesses. So I would definitely keep your books for those numbers and every single expense that comes out of your business account, which also means that you have to have a separate business account. So we have to have a separate checking account or spending account for our business that no personal transactions go through. And so we can't play that halfway. Like, oh, but my one bill comes out there for home, or, oh, I buy groceries out of there once in a while. Take time and transfer that money from the business account to your personal account and then go buy groceries. Don't mix and match those expenses. For tax purposes and for bookkeeping purposes, it should all be business all the time. So if you have not done that and you're new, please go open up usually you can get a free checking account for your business, and only be having money go in and out of there that is business related. If you've been doing this for a long time and you're sitting there thinking to yourself, well, I've never taken pay, then you're really just doing this for a hobby, which is also fine if that's what you want to do. But if it's not fine, then we need to find a way to get a baseline pay for you to be taking it so that you're not working for free. Because who the heck wants to work for free? I do not. Right? But it's a good reality check if you aren't taking any money off, that really means you're working for free. And so if you're okay with that, then I guess I'm okay with it. But if you're not okay working for free, then we need to fix it. And we can start small. We can start really small. Like, let's say you say, well, my cell phone bill is $100 a month and I'd really like to cover that. Even if you're really part-time, let's start there. Let's start paying ourselves $50 a week and then keep increasing to, I would like to get to $2,000 a week net paycheck. I am not there yet, but I would like to get to that point before I'm coasting downward to wrap this thing up. Will I get there? I don't know. I hope so, probably. But we have to start somewhere. So start small, build up from there. And keeping track of our bookkeeping weekly or monthly for our day-to-day profitability and knowing whether we're making any money or how our week went. We can also track a good buy or bad buy. It makes things more glaringly obvious when we're tracking these items, like, ooh, that's not good. I went down 20% this month, or I went up 30%, or I'm in the red all the time. Or maybe it's the opposite and it's like, wow, I'm like making lots of money, but then you look in your bank account and where's it at? So it's just good to have these things tracked so that then we can find them. It also makes tax time a lot easier. So while bookkeeping and tax accounting are totally different for different purposes, if we are that tuned into our business that we are tracking all of these things on a weekly basis, you also should make tax time a lot less stressful. Cheryl Miller has a really good tax accounting, it's like Simplified Accounting, I think is her business name, on Facebook. She has a really good worksheet that I think works really well for our tax tracking, and it also does help some for bookkeeping. But if you're filling that in every week, there's no reason why at the end of the year you can just like turn in, you're done. And it's literally just like an Excel spreadsheet. So you're just plugging in the numbers, you're just tracking it. It's not a lot of work, but it gets the job done. And it's a one-time fee, and I think you can use it forever. So it updates every year. So that's the one I use for taxes. You can use your own spreadsheet. You can use a notebook. You can scratch it down on a piece of paper. As long as you're tracking it, I don't care. If you want to wait at the end of the year to do your taxes, that's okay too. But I just think tracking these numbers as we go is the way to go. Otherwise, how do we know what our profitability is, what our margins are? Also, I think this really helps me if I notice my cost of goods creeping up. Is all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, usually I'm around $4, but then this month I averaged $6.50. Was I really getting that better at items, or did I just overspend on what I got? And sometimes if we're not tracking our numbers appropriately, we don't realize that we're paying too much for our cost of goods. So that really helps me sometimes. And if I would go to oversource, at least I would be able to recognize it. It's not to say, oh, that's bad of you, you oversource, right? It's just so that we're aware. So maybe the next month, if I know I'm carrying forward 150 items that didn't get listed last month, then maybe I just conscientiously source less the following month. Utilizing eBay's reports is super important, right? So you can go right now into your performance tab and then sales, and you could run all of your sales reports based on a custom date. So you can go back and recreate some of these numbers if you'd like. You know, if you want to start, like, let's say last month, and you go back, you can create your sales reports and it will tell you what your payouts and your gross and your net was for every single day. You could just custom do it, choose the dates. Or you can just do it moving forward. So starting today is a whole lot better than not ever starting. And a lot of people at this time of year will be like, well, I'll just start at the beginning of the year, start off fresh. Yeah, maybe we should practice a few months first. Like, go ahead and get these last couple months out of the way. You know, start plugging in the numbers, because we need to make bookkeeping a habit. If we don't make bookkeeping a habit, I feel like it becomes a chore. Anything that's a chore and then we let it get away from us, then we have to do a week at a time or a month at a time, then it feels like a big pain in the butt. And then we just don't really want to do it. I mean, I'm the same way. If something's going to be a big chore, I'm a lot less likely to do it than if it takes me a couple minutes and I'm just jotting it down and I'm moving about my day. So if we make it as part of our routine every day, it's not such a big scary thing, because we're just plugging in the numbers, whether it's for the tax sheet or the bookkeeping sheet, and it's just part of what we do every day. So for me, I do it when I send out invoices in the mornings, and it's just part of my day. Put it in for the day before, because, you know, the day didn't end when I went to bed. So I just pull the numbers, do the day before, it's all done. So it doesn't need to be scary. And if you're just getting started and you need a little bit of help, you know, that's some individual one-on-one coaching is good. And I do that, and I'll help you get your numbers in line. Or if you're keeping track of your numbers and you'd like me to look at them and say, okay, this is what I'm working with, what do I do from here? We can get you a plan. There's no right or wrong. And if you also participate in the numbers call on Thursdays in the group, I think you'll also see that nobody's judging anybody, because we're all in different places. And saying it out loud every week, I think also is helpful to being accountable to ourselves, not to anybody else, but to ourselves, and knowing that we have to have those numbers ready for Thursday call. And we just, you know, it's just the average cost of goods. Just knowing that every week keeps us in tune with our business. So if anybody has any bookkeeping questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, this is the end of our series. I hope you can go back and check the rest, but just know that I feel like bookkeeping is really important. And if you haven't started, it's not too late. Jump right in, get started, ask the questions you need to ask, and just track those numbers however you feel most comfortable. However you're most likely to keep them up is how I tell people to do it. If a fancy software will help you keep it up, you know what? Use the fancy software. If using a plain old Google Sheets the best way you'll do it, do that. If it will, writing it in a notebook, go for it. Whatever way will keep you on target doing it. So I appreciate you guys, and check out the rest of the series and the reseller revenue on Patreon. I don't want to share. What am I doing?